Thank you. Good evening, board and members of the community and staff at Brentwood. Tonight is the second interim budget report. This is part of our annual budget cycle, and this is for the time period starting July 1st through January 31st, July 1st, 2025 through January 31st, 2026. All school districts are required by Ed Code to certify their budget at 3 times a year with your board. And just before I start, I want to say a special thank you to our Director of Fiscal Services, Janelle Largent, who is over here. But Janelle and her department are really integral into the budget certification process, so thank you. So as you've heard in the past that, the district is funded based on how much revenue we get mostly from the state and from the Fed and from local funding. And in our region, Brentwood Union School District is the lowest funded district in the region. And just as an example, so Antioch Unified is the highest in our region, and per student, they receive $8,152 more than us. And if you took that for our average daily attendance for our district, that would be $78 million in 1 year more in revenue than we do get in comparison to local districts. So second interim assumptions. So these are the things that have changed since first interim when the board approved the budget in December. So what's changed? Well, one of the biggest changes that the governor in January proposed his 26-27 budget. He does this every January because the new budget starts with the new school year. So July 1st of 2026, we're in a new budget year. So what happened is our assumptions have, due to the governor's budget, are decreasing our revenue because the COLA for what he's saying for 26-27 is 0.61% lower than it was at first interim. And for the 27-28 school year, it is 0.36% lower. So that does lower our revenue projections for the 2 out years. The governor, he's also proposing to appropriate significantly less than Prop 98. And Prop 98 is really what's supposed to be a minimum guarantee of funding for state school education. And the COLA, which we talk about a lot, it doesn't even cover the annual increased cost for really operating our schools. The other change in our second interim assumptions are that our enrollment projections are indicating lower out-year enrollment numbers, which again impacts the amount of revenue we receive. So due to the COLA and enrollment projections, what's changed is that in 27-28, we originally at first interim thought we would have to have a fiscal solvency reduction of $500,000. And for second interim, it's now a $1.6 million estimated to meet the 3% reserve. So that's an increase in reductions for 27-28 of $1.13 million. So the second interim report does include the reduction proposal, which is the next agenda item on the board agenda tonight, to reduce the 26-27, which is next year, budget by $500,961. This second interim budget does not include any 25-26, which is this year, negotiated salary increases. And as a reminder, Brentwood spends about 90% of our unrestricted budget on salaries and benefits, which is higher than our surrounding districts. So I'm going to take a look here. We're going to look at enrollment projections and how that affects our second interim budget and the out years. So enrollment projections allow the district to really plan proactively for staffing and what we call multi-year fiscal sustainability, because as you know, the board is required to certify the current year budget and the 2 following year budgets in order to be certified by the California Department of Education. And these projections are updated with each budget certification. So if you take a look at the red arrow, it says second interim certified. But what this chart shows you is what projections looked like for enrollment for our district for the 3 years, this year and the 2 out years. So for example, in 25-26 at the adopted budget, which was in June, we estimated that we would have 10,227 students enrolled. We didn't know. School hadn't started yet. It was just mid-June. At first interim, we realized through the enrollment process that we were estimating 10,163 because we'd been through the Seabeds Day, which is a first Wednesday in October when there's a snapshot on what enrollment looks like, and it just gets certified. It takes several month process. So we're at 10,153. And then the changes in our enrollment, which I'll speak to after this slide, is that in the out years, our enrollment projections are also reduced. So we're looking at in 26-27, we anticipate right now to have about 10,212 students, which is 49 students less than when we set it first interim. And in the third year out, we're expecting, we don't know if we'll go up, but we're expecting at least 10,212 students again, but that is 74 students less than we were projecting. And this is what this does is, if you look at the fiscal impact below, is that this is how we get our revenue. Our revenue is based on enrollment and then our average daily attendance. So if you take a look, for example, if you look at just 26-27 and 27-28, it's sort of that last box on the bottom. You probably can't see it, but in 2 years, we would have a reduction in revenue of 1.57 million just from those enrollment numbers. So that is why enrollment and ADA is so critical. So what's changed? Well, we had a few things. We have our certified Seabeds enrollment for this year. We do a demographic study every year by a demographer. Their company comes out, and we have 1 more year of data now than we did a year ago. So a year ago, we were projecting for June what we would have. But what's happened is that TK expansion, which has been going up and up and up, I think we added 5 or 6 new TK classes last year. It's occurred. So now we have a full cohort of TK classes. Our kindergarten pipeline is not accelerating as fast as it has in the past. So our cohort growth is tapering. And a cohort is the group of students who move together from one grade to the next each year. So in looking at our enrollment projections, our upper grades are still strong in the cohort movement, but our lower grades are flattening. Now, we all know we're still building and developing and selling homes in Brentwood. And so we still have these housing assumptions over the next 6 to 7 years, but it's not offsetting the slower cohorts at the rate it was previously. So really, our projections have stabilized versus are growing at a higher rate. And so the softening cohort growth is what's happening, which may indicate a gradual enrollment decline based on where we were, say, at first interim or adopted budget. And I just wanted to include this slide. Again, this is an agenda item at the next agenda item, but we have brought the budget reduction proposal, and this has been included in second interim. And I do just want to speak to it now. as well as next agenda item. But it was brought to the Budget Advisory Committee in January. It was brought to the board as an information item in February, and the board asked for feedback. They did receive feedback, and because of that, the board we're approving that we fund the IXL contract for one more year, assuming we get some new money for the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, which I will talk about later in the presentation. So we will be able to fund that for one more year. And there will be a new math adoption the following year, so that will no longer be needed. It'll be integrated, something similar. So here we are, second interim projections. So we're asking the board to certify again that this fiscal year and the next 2 fiscal years, we will meet our fiscal solvency requirements, which means a minimum 3% unrestricted ending fund balance reserve in all 3 years. So if you take a look at our combined revenues and expenditures for this year, and we have an unrestricted ending fund balance of 4.54%. Then when you take a look at 26-27, we are showing that we will continue, as we did at first interim, to have a transfer from Fund 17 to Fund 1 of $739,000. What's not showing now is the budget reduction of $500,961 that was on that slide at first interim, because it's now part of the revenue and expenditures. And you're at 3.53%. And then looking at the third year out, which is 27-28, we are at 3.03%, which is really the minimum required. And it shows a fiscal solvency reduction of 1.6 million, which previously we were looking at estimating 500,000 in reductions. But because of the enrollment slowdown and the LCFF revenue and COLA going down due to the governor's budget, we're estimating 1.6 million increase. So again, the 4.5% reserve that we have for this fiscal year is the lowest in district history. You can see when you look at, say, 2021, you're like, wow, we had 10.29%. That was COVID. And so what happened with COVID money was we were able to take one-time money for general fund expenditures to help learning with students in programs to offset some of the costs. And all that is now used up. And again, you are also certifying that all our funds have positive ending fund balances. And again, for example, Fund 21 is our building bond fund. That cannot be spent in the general fund. It is spent based on the statutory requirements, which for that instance is using it on for our bond buildings. So looking outward, really, so when it says multi-year budget outlook, this really has to do with what is our next year's budget, which you're going to see in June, look like. So, as I said, the COLA reductions in enrollment will reduce revenues for LCFF. We expect by $3.45 million over the next 2 years. Just a reminder, special education program costs continue to rise at over 6% a year, which is looking at about $2 million annually in the out years. And for 26-27, we do have conservative staffing allocations as enrollment softens. So there is some upside to the governor's proposed budget for significant one-time funds for a discretionary block grant, which could be used for addressing rising costs, similar to what we have this year. So this could provide up to $4.9 million in one-time funds. But since the one-time funds are only proposed, we are not allowed to include them in next year's budget projection. We also have proposed more learning recovery emergency block grant funds, which could be about $200,000, again, proposed. And that's what we are talking about with some one-time money for the IXL contract. Also proposed and would be an increase to the special education base funds, which would provide about $750,000 in ongoing for special education. So what are we looking at, between now and June? So as you know, we have just the district budget reductions required. So for this year, for 26-27, we've reduced by $500,000 in second interim. 27-28, we're looking at a reduction of $1.6 million, and this is an increase of a reduction of 1.13 from first interim. Also, Fund 17 balance, $739,000 will be in the 26-27 year. So again, second interim does not include any 25-26 negotiated salary increases. The state budget remains uncertain and won't be signed into law until June. Now, the governor does do what he calls a May revision in mid-May, and so he'll come up with his updated proposed 26-27 budget, but it can still change again until it's signed into law and takes effect on July 1st of 2026. Excuse me. So our district budget is in critical condition, and our ending fund balance reserve is the lowest in our district history. And that's the end of my presentation.
Yeah, it's hard to end that with asking for a positive certification, but that's the term, meaning that we can meet our responsibilities for this year and the next 2 years. One thing that I want to go back to something that Diane said about the governor underfunding Proposition 98, right? Something that we should all be screaming about is the fact that Proposition 98 was set up to be a minimum standard for funding education. It was never meant to be the maximum. It was saying you can't go below this. And the fact that the January proposal has recommended proposing $5.6 billion under that minimum standard, which for us is about $9 million, right? It would solve a lot of our issues going forward. It's just unconscionable. And so we're very hopeful that people will keep pushing back on this. We've seen a lot of pushback on it, but the state is also having financial challenges, right, as they go forward. And so I think the May revision will be very important to see if there's any movement in that as we go forward. But it's disheartening to see that with all the promises that are made by people that are running for those positions, and then to dramatically underfund Proposition 98 is really, it's not fair to schools and school districts and school children.
Great. Any board comment, questions?
No, thank you very much, Sam. It's very straightforward, and I wish it was better news. Just
this is the second time we've heard a lot of this, and actually more than that by people, people talking with you in between. But really, this really kind of comes down to almost like a good news, bad news thing, in the sense that we can with confidence, approve the second interim. But we also know what we're committing to is some real serious work with cutting because we have big cuts to make in order to meet the commitment of 3 years of solvency, or 3 years of 3% reserve. And then on top of that is all of the uncertainty, because we really don't even know what the budget's going to look like. And everybody wants to address the issues that are here, including salary and everything else. But we're in a position without having the knowledge that we need, the certainty rather, to make these decisions. But you've done a really great job, and both of you, of just laying this out for us well and organizing the information in a way that gives us the opportunity to analyze and make the best decisions that we can.
I've been on the board a long time and started some 30 years ago. I think
beginning, and this is the first time that I've seen a budget report like this bad, this negative, and potentially even worse. I'm not trying to be a wave a banner, but we really, as citizens, need to study our political agendas, make sure that we vote people in. We can't create what we don't have. And we recognize that we're all here for children. And the most important part of children are the teachers. And we need to keep our teachers up too. And yet we're all dealing with this same budget crisis. And if you aren't fiscal responsible, you can't provide the programs you need to provide or the staff you need to provide. And it's frightening. So great, at least we have a presentation and it's clear. Thank you.
if there's nothing further, I'll move that we approve item 10.1, the second interim report.
I'll second.
I had a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving 10.1?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's been approved 5-0. Moving on to 10.2. You covered that already, correct or no?